Greetings I bring from MCEC and the Toronto Chinese Mennonite Church. Off the bat, let me admit that I'm very new at this. I'm just getting my feet wet at my Anabaptist journey. It's been a fantastic journey coming back to serve as a pastor in a Mennonite church, but it has been a whirlwind of learning. I have been trying to adjust to a new culture, learning the Mennonite lingo and the names. But I have been cramming, I have been studying, I've been trying to raise my Mennoniteness by reading the Canadian Mennonite. I still remember my very first conference experience in Ontario. I was just out of high school, and being there felt really strange. It was strange because my pastor and I were pretty much the only visible minorities. And during the open mic session, I was surprised at how lively the discussion was. And it seemed to me they were arguing and shouting. So I turned to my pastor and I asked him, "Why are they shouting like that?" And he turned to me and said, "Brian, don't look at it as shouting. They're discerning." Discerning, that was my first Mennonite word. This is one thing I really appreciate about you, us. It is that even though our opinions are far-ranging, we listen to each other and engage each other openly and honestly. And we give time for each other to reflect, to listen to the Spirit, and then respond. Now, it's a great privilege for me to share these 3 days with two other fantastic presenters, Betty Priest. I first met Betty at Conrad Grable in a workshop, and Betty, as a church consultant, she's keenly aware of the challenges that are facing our churches. And she's articulate and sharp, and her presentations are always engaging. So we look forward to hearing from her. And then, of course, we have your hometown preacher, David Dreger. I've only seen a picture of him until today. I don't know him very well yet, but he writes an excellent blog in the Canadian Mennonite. And I say that you look better in person than in picture. With Mark 4 as our guiding text for the next few days, we open our theme tonight with these thoughts. Leaving and going. Where is God calling us? As church leaders of Mennonite Church Canada, we have been sensing strong currents of change. We are sensing that God is leading us into the unknown and uncharted waters. And many of us identify acutely with Mark 4 here. The disciples follow Jesus' lead, but they are suddenly faced with a wild and unexpected storm. They attempt to wrestle through it, but with uncertain outcomes. And as leaders in the Mennonite Church, we're trying to navigate our boat through these volatile times. We are dealing with new trends, unseen forces, and challenges that we have not confronted before. We have not been this way before. So we've been asking ourselves questions like, what does the future hold for MC Canada? How does our local church adjust to these changes? And what hope is there for our future generation? Well, when it comes to the topic of future and predictions, I'm not good with either the future or predicting, but I do like what an ancient Chinese poet has said. He says, "Those who have knowledge do not predict, and those who predict don't have knowledge." I will add, I do not have knowledge, nor will I predict. When I think of leaving and going, I think about going away from the familiar. I think about leaving a place of safety, a place where we feel like we belong. When we go, it interrupts, it disrupts. When we're in the company of good friends and fellowship and it's time to leave, it breaks the welcome and the hospitality. We much prefer the feeling of being attached. We like to have loved ones close to us. We like being in our own homes. We like our own pillows. We like our own brand of coffee. As a church, we feel the disruption and the interruptions of moving into this new, unknown season. The season has come to us unexpectedly, and it feels unusual and unfamiliar. One of the greatest sea explorers to have ever lived was a man by the name of Sir Francis Drake. And Sir Drake, he was an Englishman, a sailor, and a navigator. He had this insatiable appetite to explore and to find new lands. And this is what made him a legendary hero in England. And he had wanted to sail and explore these uncharted lands, and he needed to assemble a crew who would go with him on this expedition. So he went down to the docks one day looking for a new crew. He stood on a crate and he advertised his expedition this way: "Come with me and see the most amazing things your eyes could ever behold. Sandy white beaches, exotic lands with trees that bear huge fruit. Experience unknown peoples and cultures. See the beautiful landscapes and priceless artifacts. Step forward and join me on this adventure." He jumps off the crate, and to his disappointment, no one responded. He was surprised. Why this apathetic response? No one was coming. So Captain Drake thought things over and decided on a new strategy. He decided to take a different approach. The next day, he went down to the same docks, he stood on the same crate, and he made this open speech. "I need men for a dangerous and hazardous journey. Fresh water would be scarce. There will be small wages, bitter cold, long months of complete darkness, and constant danger. You'll encounter terrifying sea storms, and we may be blown off course for months. Shipwreck is a strong possibility, limited to only a few men." Before he stepped off the crate, dozens of men came forward. Some didn't even say goodbye to their families, and they were ready to go on this voyage with him. Question: what is the difference? What was the difference between the first group and the second group? Was the second group more courageous? Were they more adventurous? Probably not. The difference was not in the men, it was the message. It was actually the same group of men in the same trip, but the message was different. The first group had no interest in sightseeing. They were not there looking for entertainment nor rewards. They were not interested in taking a vacation. No, instead, they were looking for more. They were restless in the harbor, and they were eager for a new challenge. They were ready for something that would test their courage, their resolve, and their strength. They needed something to give them deeper meaning. Now, some self-reflection here. If we were at the docks that morning, how would we respond, given these two options? I think the story speaks to us because we've made that decision long ago. As followers of Christ, we have embarked on a journey that doesn't promise comfort. It is a journey that is filled with uncertainty and uncertain outcomes. But somehow, the call to go, the call to follow the Master resonates so deep with us. The call to go leave the familiar is okay because there is something wild and hopeful out there. Let me just close with this final story. My son Isaiah recently discovered the excitement of the big roller coasters. He is now 7 years old, and he wants to go on the biggest and fastest rides at Canada's Wonderland. At this point, he will not go back to the kiddie rides in Snoopyland. But to me, these rides, they're much safer. They're much less risky, and they're less scary. But no, he will not go back to them. He says, those are for babies. Something inside of him is calling him to discover, to test his limits, to go and test the uncharted waters. I think we can learn a lot from our children. If you have young children, or if you have grandchildren, then before they go to bed, ask them this question. Ask them this: what do you want to be when you grow up? What do you want to be when you grow up? And when you ask them this question, what do you think they'll say to you? Will they say, well, Dad, Grandma, I just want to work in the office. I just want my own private cubicle, my own stapler, and I want to push paper all day. Is that what a 5 or 7-year-old will say? Hardly. They want to be explorers, scientists, and adventurers. Why? Because they want to make a difference. They want to do something that's important and significant. Is this not the yearning of our inner child? We want to be called to go out there. Or perhaps we let our fears overcome us. Shall we sail back to the safety of our harbor? I asked my son, Isaiah, what do you want to be when you grow up? He said, Dad, I want to be a Power Ranger. And I said, you will make a great Mennonite Power Ranger. The disciples signed up for a new adventure. They were not content with pushing paper, hauling a net, and pushing on a paddle. They wanted to go to the other side. Ignorant, foolhardy, risky? Perhaps. But we prefer to see it as faith and hope in a sovereign God. So if we are here as people of God, we are in this boat. We are in this boat together. It is not a big boat, but it's a resilient one. And being in the open waters is risky, but it is not an accident. This is exactly where God calls us to be. Jesus has led us into these uncertain, unpredictable places. But we have hope, wild hope in a magnificent God. So let us begin to discover this together in this assembly, in our communities, in our cities, and with our families. Let us go.